Welcome back for another deep dive. You know how much we love getting into the nitty-gritty of those groundbreaking ideas, and today is no different. We're tackling disruptive innovation, specifically how companies can bring those innovations to a wider market. And I say can because, let's face it, that's often where things get tricky.
Absolutely. It's that leap from early adopters to the mainstream market that trips up so many. Luckily, we've got a guide for today's deep dive, and that's Geoffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm. It's become almost a must-read for anyone in the tech world trying to make that leap.
Yeah, Crossing the Chasm, the title itself just captures that challenge perfectly.
Right.
So let's set the scene, right? Imagine a company, they've got this amazing product, truly revolutionary, something that could change the game. They've seen some early success, those early adopters, the ones who are always hungry for the next big thing, they're on board. But when it comes to cracking the wider market, that's where they hit a wall. That's the chasm Moore is talking about, right?
Precisely. And to understand why that chasm is so difficult to cross, we need to talk about the difference between what Moore calls continuous innovations and discontinuous innovations.
Okay, so continuous innovations are like those incremental improvements, like a faster processor or a new phone with a slightly better camera, the kind of upgrades we've come to expect, stuff that just kind of fits into how we already do things.
Exactly. They improve upon existing technology and are pretty easy for people to adopt. But discontinuous innovations, those are the game changers. They require us to change how we do things, sometimes even change how we think about things, and that's where the resistance comes in.
Got it. So give us an example. What are some of those discontinuous innovations that just really struggled to get over that hump?
Well, think about 3D TVs. On paper, the technology was pretty amazing, but to really experience it, you needed those special glasses, and there wasn't a whole lot of content available in that format.
Right, and not everyone was willing to make that switch. It's not like regular TV suddenly stopped working.
Exactly. It required a shift in behavior, not just from consumers, but from the entire entertainment ecosystem. The content creators, the broadcasters, everyone had to buy in. Same thing with those early Google Chrome notebooks. Sleek, innovative, but guess what? Not compatible with all that software everyone was already using.
Yeah, not everyone was ready to abandon everything they knew and loved for a new type of laptop.
So it sounds like one of the biggest hurdles for these discontinuous innovations is that they often require changes, not just from the individual consumer, but from the whole supporting infrastructure.
Absolutely, you hit the nail on the head. It's like trying to launch a new type of car without having the gas stations to support it.
Think about early electric cars. You needed charging stations everywhere, and battery technology just wasn't there yet.
So what's the biggest trap companies fall into when they're trying to bring these game changers to the masses?
The classic mistake, misinterpreting early success. You see those tech enthusiasts, the visionaries lining up to buy your product, and you think, we've made it, mainstream, here we come. But Moore calls this the high-tech marketing illusion.
Because those early adopters, those are the folks who camp out for the latest iPhone, they're not exactly representative of the average consumer.
Exactly. They're driven by different motivations. Visionaries, they want to be on the cutting edge, they're willing to take risks, even put up with some inconvenience just to be ahead of the curve. But the majority of people, they're more practical. They want reliability, ease of use, something that fits into their existing lives.
So how should companies be thinking about those relationships with their early enthusiastic customers, the visionaries, while still keeping an eye on the bigger prize, that mainstream success?
Visionaries are crucial in the early stages. They provide that valuable feedback, help refine the product, generate buzz. You need to nurture those relationships, no question. But you also have to recognize that they're not the end game. You can't let their enthusiasm blind you to the needs of the broader market.
It's like trying to build a skyscraper on a foundation of sand. Right.
Oh,
Might look impressive for a while, but eventually.
perfect analogy. You said it. To build a sustainable business, you need to reach those pragmatists. They're the ones who will ultimately determine your product's fate.
Okay, let's talk about these pragmatists. What sets them apart from those visionary early adopters?
Well, pragmatists were all about practicality. They're driven by results, they're risk-averse, they want proof. Before investing time or money, they need to see that something works. They look at industry standards, what their peers are doing, things like that.
They're the ones reading all the reviews before making a purchase.
Yeah.
Right. Looking for that reassurance that they're making a smart choice.
Exactly. They don't buy into hype easily. Data, case studies, testimonials from others like them, that's what they need.
So how do you convince these pragmatists, these careful consumers, to ditch the old way of doing things and embrace something truly disruptive? How do you get them to take that leap of faith?
It's about more than just a great product. Pragmatists need a complete solution. Moore calls this the whole product. It's not just the technology itself, but the entire ecosystem surrounding it. The supporting infrastructure, the partners, the distribution channels, customer service, you name it.
They want to know that they're not just buying a product, they're buying a solution to a problem. And it has to fit into their lives.
Exactly. It can't be some cool idea floating in a vacuum. It's got to be a real practical solution that makes their lives easier, better.
So a company like Brickstream, they developed video analytics for retail. I remember them. They might have initially struggled because they were trying to do too much too soon. The technology wasn't quite ready to deliver on those early ambitious promises.
That's a great example. Brickstream eventually found success by focusing on more practical applications, simply counting people entering stores. Less groundbreaking, sure, but they could deliver it reliably, and it was something retailers really needed.
Sometimes scaling back, focusing on a smaller, more achievable goal, can be the smarter move. It's about building credibility.
Absolutely. Starting small and gaining momentum is often more effective than trying to boil the ocean. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Moore suggests that companies should actually create competition.
Hold on, create competition. That sounds counterintuitive. Wouldn't you want to emphasize how unique your product is, not invite more players into the game?
I know, right? But remember, pragmatists are looking for reassurance. They want to see that others have bought into your solution, that it's not just a fringe idea.
So if you're the only one doing what you do, you almost have to create that perception of a market, even if you're the one defining it.
You could say that. Highlight companies with similar approaches, even if they're not direct competitors. You're creating a category. Think about Tesla. They position themselves as the leader in luxury electric vehicles, even though there weren't many players in that space initially.
So you're not necessarily trying to create head-to-head competition, but you're creating that sense that your product is part of a bigger trend, something that's gaining traction.
You got it. And that can be very reassuring for pragmatists who are hesitant to be the first to jump on board.
Makes sense. Now, choosing the right market segment to target, that's got to be a crucial decision. And I know you can't just rely on those big market forecasts that sometimes miss the mark. What does Moore suggest?
He calls it informed intuition. Not just a gut feeling, but doing your research, really understanding the needs, challenges, motivations of your target customers.
So rather than casting a wide net, you need to be laser focused on those who are most likely to benefit from your product right now, right? They might not be the biggest group, but they're the ones who become your champions, those early adopters within that pragmatic majority.
Precisely. It's about creating what he calls a target customer characterization. You build a detailed profile of your ideal customer, their pain points, their goals, their buying behaviors. You really get inside their heads.
Okay, so let's say you've got this incredible new 3D printer that can create custom lighting fixtures. Instead of trying to sell it to everyone, you might focus on interior designers. A hypothetical designer, let's call him David, who's struggling to find unique, affordable lighting solutions for his clients.
Exactly. You understand David's workflow, his pain points, and how your 3D printer solves his problems in a way that traditional manufacturing simply can't. You're not just selling him a printer, you're selling him a solution that helps him be more creative, efficient, profitable.
You're helping him see that this technology can actually enhance his craft. Okay, you've identified your perfect David, your target customer. Now what?
You assemble your invasion force.
Love the military analogy. You're talking about building a network of partners and allies to help you conquer that target market.
Right, you got it. You need to identify the key players who help you deliver that whole product solution. Remember, pragmatists want the complete package, not just a piece of it.
So for our interior designer, David, and those custom lighting fixtures, who would be in his invasion force?
You might need partners who can help David convert his sketches into digital designs, manufacturers who supply the specialized materials for the fixtures, maybe even lighting fixture installers to handle that final step.
It's about building that entire value chain, making it as easy as possible for David to adopt your solution and see the benefits.
Exactly. It's about creating a seamless experience that eliminates all the friction, makes it a no-brainer for them to say yes to your disruptive innovation.
Wow. I'm already seeing how crossing the chasm can be such a game changer for companies that are struggling to reach that mainstream market. This invasion force concept is brilliant, but once you've got your troops assembled, how do you actually launch that invasion? That's where we'll pick up next time on our deep dive. We'll be exploring those pricing and distribution strategies that are crucial for winning over those pragmatist buyers. So stay tuned because you won't want to miss it.
You know, one thing that really stuck with me from Crossing the Chasm is how Moore emphasizes that crossing the chasm, it's not just about tweaking your marketing. It's about a company-wide transformation. You need a shift in mindset from top to bottom.
It's like changing the company's DNA,
Yeah.
right? You're evolving. You go from that scrappy startup energy to a more mature, disciplined approach. So where do you even begin with something like that?
Well, a good place to start is by aligning your financial planning with the realities of the mainstream market. See, that early market success, it can be a bit misleading. Those visionaries, they might be throwing money at you, but that doesn't always translate to sustainable growth when you're targeting the pragmatic majority.
So how do you bridge that gap? How do you convince investors that you're not just a flash in the pan, that you've got a real plan for a solid, profitable business long term?
By demonstrating that you understand the whole product, you need to show investors that you're not just focused on the tech itself, but you're thinking about the entire package, the partners, the distribution channels, the customer service, the whole 9 yards.
Like building a house.
Yeah.
It's not enough to have a fancy facade. You need a good foundation, solid plumbing wiring that's up to code.
Exactly. Investors want to see that big picture thinking. Show them you're allocating resources strategically to build something that lasts, not just chasing the hype.
And I think from an entrepreneur's perspective, it's also about honesty, right? Being realistic about how long it'll take to reach profitability, making sure you have enough runway.
Couldn't agree more. It's finding that balance between that entrepreneurial drive and financial discipline. No more fake it till you make it. You need a solid plan and the resources to make it happen.
Okay, so financial planning, super crucial. What about the people side of the equation? How do you navigate that shift in culture from startup to a more mature company?
Well, Moore talks about pioneers and settlers, and that really resonated with me. You need both to build a successful business, but their roles change as you cross the chasm.
Okay, break that down. Pioneers and settlers, who are they?
The pioneers, they're the explorers.
Yep.
They're comfortable with chaos, always pushing boundaries. They're the ones who come up with those disruptive ideas in the first place. Thrive in that early market.
They're driven by that passion for creating something new, something that shakes things up. But the settlers, where do they fit in?
Settlers come in after the pioneers have, staked their claim. They're the builders. They focus on bringing order, structure, building something sustainable. They're the ones who turn those groundbreaking ideas into real functioning businesses.
So as you move from that early market to the mainstream, the company needs to shift from a pioneer culture to a settler culture.
Precisely. And that can be a tough transition. Pioneers, they often resist structure, process, documentation, standardization. That's not their thing. They want to keep innovating, even when the market's demanding stability and predictability.
It's like the difference between exploring uncharted territory and building a city, right? Both essential, but requiring different skills, different mindsets.
You nailed it. The challenge is to manage that transition in a way that respects the pioneers' contributions while creating space for the settlers to do their thing.
That sounds like walking a tightrope. How do you do that without alienating the very people who helped you get to this point?
Communication is key. Transparency and acknowledging that different people thrive in different environments. Some pioneers might be happy to move on to new projects, keep exploring. Others might be ready for a change of pace, transition to roles focused on execution and process.
It's about finding the right fit for everyone, recognizing that what got you here might not get you there.
Absolutely, and creating a culture that values both innovation and execution. You need both for long-term success. It's a delicate balance, no doubt.
For sure. And this whole pioneer-settler dynamic, it's not just happening in the engineering department, right?
Yeah.
The sales team's going through a similar shift. They're the ones on the front lines dealing directly with those customers.
You're absolutely right. Those early salespeople, the pioneers, they're often charismatic, high energy, great at connecting with those visionaries. They can paint a picture of the future, close those big early deals.
They get those visionaries excited, even if the product is still a work in progress. But when you're targeting pragmatists, those same sales tactics, they might not fly.
You got it. Pragmatists, they're less interested in the sizzle, more interested in the steak. They want the facts, the data, case studies, testimonials from folks like them. They want to know it's reliable, well-supported, and will work with their existing systems.
So you need a different kind of salesperson to win them over.
You need salespeople who are patient, methodical, detail-oriented. They're good listeners, they understand the customer's needs, and they explain how the product solves those problems in a concrete, measurable way.
It's not just swapping out people, it's building a whole new sales culture, one that's in sync with the mainstream market.
Exactly. What worked in the early market might not work in the long run. You have to adapt.
Okay, this whole pioneers versus settlers concept is fascinating. It's like watching history repeat itself within a high-tech company.
It is. And it's crucial to understand this dynamic if you want to successfully navigate the chasm and build a business that lasts.
We've talked about financial planning, organizational structure, the shift from pioneer to settler culture. But what about the product itself? How does R&D change as you cross the chasm?
That's a key part of the transformation. Remember, in the early market, R&D is driven by that quest for pure technological innovation, pushing the boundaries, exploring new ideas, creating that wow factor for the visionaries.
Makes sense. But that approach, it doesn't always translate well to the mainstream, does it? Pragmatists, they're looking for something different.
They are. They're less impressed by cutting-edge tech and more interested in solutions that address their specific needs, their challenges. So the focus of R&D has to shift. It goes from developing new products to refining and expanding existing ones.
So instead of constantly chasing the next shiny object, you double down on making your existing product the best it can be, making sure it truly meets the needs of those pragmatists.
Exactly. And this is where that whole product concept really shines. R&D focuses on developing the ecosystem around the core product, building integrations with other solutions, ensuring compatibility, making sure it's a seamless part of the customer's workflow.
You're not just building a product, you're building a complete solution, something that fits seamlessly into the customer's world.
That's it. True innovation doesn't stop at the product level. It extends to the entire customer experience and the value chain.
It's like the difference between inventing the light bulb and building the whole electrical grid. One's a great invention, but the other is what makes it truly useful, transformative.
Fantastic analogy. And that's the challenge as companies cross the chasm. It's about shifting their focus from inventing cool tech to building the infrastructure that makes that tech truly valuable and accessible.
Sounds like crossing the chasm requires a fundamental shift in thinking about innovation. It's not just about having great ideas. It's about building a sustainable business that can bring those ideas to the people who need them.
You hit the nail on the head. It's an ongoing process. Adaptability, resilience, and a deep understanding of your market. Those are key.
Okay, we've talked about the big picture changes, but what about day-to-day operations? What are some specific things companies can do to smooth out this transition?
One of the first things Moore recommends is focusing on getting those early pragmatist customers up and running quickly. Those early wins, they generate word of mouth, build momentum. It's essential.
Because nothing's more persuasive than a satisfied customer,
Yeah.
right? Especially when you're trying to win over those skeptical pragmatists.
Yeah.
They need to see proof.
Absolutely. It's not just about installation. It's about making sure those early customers are successful, achieving those results you promised.
So it's going beyond basic support, becoming a true partner.
Exactly. You want to be seen as a trusted advisor, someone invested in their success, and you use those early implementations to learn, refine your whole product offering, identify any gaps, address them quickly.
So those early adopters become almost like co-developers, helping you shape the product for the wider market.
You got it. Their feedback is gold. You can use it to create case studies, testimonials, marketing materials that resonate with other pragmatists.
You're turning those early wins into powerful tools to convince others that your solution is the real deal.
Exactly. And as you build those success stories, you start thinking about expanding into new market segments. That's where growth happens.
So you're replicating that success, finding other niches where your product solves similar problems.
Yeah.
But how do you choose the right markets? Just go for the biggest ones first.
Not necessarily. Moore suggests a more strategic approach, the bowling pin strategy.
Okay, another great analogy. Tell me more about this bowling pin strategy.
Think about how you bowl. You don't try to knock down all the pins at once. You aim for the head pin, let the momentum take care of the rest.
So you're saying you focus on one target market, one segment, and then use that success to create a ripple effect into other segments. It's like dominoes.
That's it. Find that niche where your product has a really strong value proposition, and you go all in on winning that segment.
So it's about choosing your battles carefully, making sure you can achieve a decisive victory before moving on to the next one.
Exactly. Once you've established a beachhead, you can expand into those adjacent segments, leveraging your credibility and your track record.
It's a military campaign, secure a strategic location, and then you use it as a base for further operations.
Another great analogy. And just like a military campaign, you need a plan, a well-defined target, the right resources, no winging it.
That's not about randomly targeting segments. It's about carefully choosing those most likely to embrace your solution and then using those wins to build momentum.
Exactly. This is where all that work we talked about, defining your target customer, building your whole product, crafting your positioning, it all comes together.
It's all connected. You understand who you're targeting, what they need, and how your product solves their problems in a way that nobody else can.
That's right. You're selling a solution, a vision, not just a product. And that focus is essential for making that bowling pin strategy work for achieving mainstream success. But crossing the chasm, it's not a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process.
Okay, so you've made it across. You've got that foothold in the mainstream. What's next? How do you stay there? How do you make sure you don't fall back into the chasm?
That's where we get into what Moore calls leaving the chasm behind, and that's what we'll dive into in part 3 of our deep dive. It's about building a business that can truly thrive over the long haul. Stay tuned.
Okay, so we've talked about how to launch that invasion, gain that crucial foothold in the mainstream market. But as you pointed out, crossing the chasm is just the first step. It's not the end of the journey, right?
Exactly. Crossing the chasm, that's a major milestone, but it's not the finish line. Moore calls this next phase leaving the chasm behind. It's all about building a sustainable business, one that can thrive in the long run. Think of it like shifting gears, moving from a wartime mentality to peacetime. You've won the battle, but now you need to win the peace.
So you're not just fighting for survival anymore. You're building a company that can scale, grow, and adapt to, all the changes that are constantly happening in the market.
Precisely. It's a whole new ballgame. So what are the keys to success in this phase? Well, first and foremost, you need to solidify your position. Become the dominant player in that niche you've carved out.
Right. Remember that bowling pin strategy we talked about? You've knocked down that first pin. Now it's time to take out the rest.
Exactly. Keep that momentum going. Expand into those adjacent market segments. Use your credibility, your track record, to win over more of those pragmatist buyers.
Show them that you're not a one-hit wonder. You're here to stay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not just about expanding your customer base. It's about deepening those relationships with your existing customers, turning them into loyal fans, advocates who'll spread the word.
Because nothing beats word-of-mouth marketing, especially when it's coming from someone you trust. Pragmatists, they want to hear from other pragmatists that your solution delivers.
That's it. Focus on providing that exceptional customer service. Build a community around your product. Make your customers feel valued, heard. It's a virtuous cycle. Happy customers lead to more customers, which leads to growth and innovation.
And that innovation is key for staying ahead of the competition, right?
Right.
Because once you cross the chasm, you're going to attract some attention. Other companies are going to see what you're doing, and they're going to want a piece of that pie.
Absolutely. You're sending up a flare, signaling that there's a viable market here. And that attracts everyone, the imitators, the innovators, everybody. You've got to be ready.
So you can't just sit back and relax. You've got to keep innovating, refining your product, finding new ways to meet those evolving customer needs. Complacency is the enemy.
You said it. But innovation doesn't always mean reinventing the wheel. It can be finding new applications for existing technology, expanding into new markets, even just improving your internal processes to be more efficient, more customer-centric.
It's about staying agile, adaptable, being willing to evolve with the market. Change is the only constant, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that brings us to another crucial aspect of leaving the chasm behind. Building a sustainable organizational structure. That transition from a pioneer culture to a settler culture that we talked about earlier, well, that's an ongoing process, not a one-time event.
Right. You can't just flip a switch and go from scrappy startup to well-oiled machine overnight. It takes time, it takes work, it takes a willingness to adapt to change.
Exactly. So what are some key areas to focus on in terms of organizational structure? Well, creating clear roles and responsibilities is a big one. As your company grows, you need that well-defined structure that everyone understands.
Right, because as you add more people to the team, things can get messy fast if everyone's not on the same page. You need clear communication, well-defined processes, a shared understanding of the company's goals and values.
Exactly. You also need to build a strong leadership team, one that can guide the company through this growth phase. And the leadership skills that were essential for getting you across the chasm, they might not be the same skills you need to build a long-term sustainable business.
So are you saying that sometimes those founders, those early leaders, they need to step back, and make room for new leaders who have the experience and the know-how to manage a larger, more complex organization.
Sometimes, yes, it can be hard for those early pioneers to let go, but it's often necessary for the health of the company. You need leaders who can delegate, build strong teams, make those data-driven decisions.
It's not just about product and strategy. It's about having the right people in the right roles. It's about execution.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And as you scale, maintaining that culture of innovation, that's essential too. It's what got you this far.
It's easy to get lost in the day-to-day and lose that entrepreneurial spirit. How do you keep that spark alive?
One way is to create a dedicated innovation team, a separate department. Give them the freedom to experiment, take risks, think big.
So you're creating a space where that pioneer spirit can thrive, even as the rest of the organization is focused on scaling and execution. It's almost like having a mini startup within the larger company.
Exactly. But you can foster innovation throughout the organization too. Encourage employees to share ideas, experiment, challenge the status quo. Don't let those pioneer voices fade away.
Leaving the chasm behind, it's not about abandoning those pioneering principles. It's about integrating them into a more mature structure, finding that right balance.
Absolutely. It's about balancing innovation and execution, the excitement of the early market with the discipline of the mainstream, and recognizing that the journey, it never really ends. There will always be new challenges, new markets, new innovations to explore.
Crossing the chasm, it's just one chapter in the larger story of building a company that can truly make a difference.
That's a great way to put it. And Crossing the Chasm is a great guide for that journey. It gives you a framework for understanding those challenges and opportunities. But ultimately, each company has to write its own story, find its own path to success.
This has been a fantastic deep dive into Crossing the Chasm. We've covered so much ground, from understanding the dynamics of the chasm to launching that invasion, building a sustainable business. I think our listeners have a lot to chew on.
I hope so. And I hope they're inspired to take a look at their own businesses, their own products and strategies for navigating the chasm.
Because whether you're a startup founder, a CEO, or just someone who's excited about innovation, Crossing the Chasm has something for everyone.
It really does. So keep innovating, keep pushing those boundaries, keep that pioneer spirit alive. Who knows, maybe you'll be the one writing the next chapter in the story of disruptive innovation.
What a great thought. And to our listeners, we highly recommend picking up a copy of Crossing the Chasm. It's a book that can truly change how you think about innovation.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas.
The pleasure was all ours. And to all of you listening, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep challenging the status quo. We'll be back next time with another deep dive into the world of ideas that matter.